You're looking at a number so big it doesn't even feel real anymore. $38 trillion. That's how much the United States government owes right now. It's more than the entire economic output of China, Japan, and Germany combined. Stack it in $100 bills, and you could reach the moon and back 5 times. We hear these numbers so often, we've become numb to them. But here's what cuts through the noise: your government isn't planning to pay this back. Not with your taxes, not with spending cuts. They're executing a sophisticated, silent strategy that's already in motion. One that uses the very assets you think are separate from the system, crypto and gold, to make this debt disappear. And when they do, every dollar in your bank account, every bond in your retirement fund, every bit of purchasing power you have will be systematically erased. This isn't conspiracy, this is policy. And by the end of this video, you'll see exactly how the pieces are moving into place right now. Let's start with what everyone misses: government debt isn't like your debt. When you owe money, you have to work more hours, sell assets, cut back spending. But when a government that controls its own currency owes money, it has a nuclear option. It can change what that currency is worth. Think of it this way: if you owed $100,000 on your mortgage, you couldn't just walk into the bank and declare that dollars are now worth half what they were yesterday. But governments can do exactly that, and they have repeatedly throughout history. The blueprint was set in 1933 when Franklin Roosevelt faced a debt-to-GDP ratio that had ballooned to 40%, a crisis level at the time. His solution was radical and ruthless. First, he made it illegal for Americans to own gold through Executive Order 6102, forcing citizens to turn in their gold coins and bars at the official price of $20.67 per ounce. Then, once the government had consolidated the nation's gold, he revalued it overnight to $35 per ounce, 69% increase. With the stroke of a pen, the government's gold reserves suddenly became worth billions more, creating $2.8 billion in balance sheet value out of thin air. But the real magic was what happened to the debt. Those pre-revaluation dollars that creditors were holding became significantly less valuable. Within 5 years, the real debt burden had fallen from 40% to 25% of GDP. The government had effectively transferred wealth from dollar holders and savers to itself, erasing 15 percentage points of debt relative to the economy without a single tax increase or spending cut. This is the playbook, and we're seeing it run again today, just with different assets and more sophisticated branding. So where are we right now? The United States has hit $38 trillion in national debt, with the fastest accumulation of $1 trillion in debt outside of the pandemic period just occurring. The debt-to-GDP ratio stands at approximately 132%, higher than any time in American history except World War II. But the real killer isn't the principal, it's the interest. The annual interest payment on that debt has reached $1.2 trillion, more than the entire defense budget, more than Medicare. To put that in perspective, the Joint Economic Committee estimates the national debt has been growing by approximately $69,713 per second for the past year, according to the Peter G. Peterson Foundation. Interest costs are now the fastest growing part of the budget. We spent $4 trillion on interest over the last decade, but we're projected to spend $14 trillion in the next 10 years. These interest payments crowd out important public and private investments in our future, harming the economy for every American. The Congressional Budget Office has run the numbers. There is no scenario where this debt gets paid back through traditional means. You can't tax your way out of 132% debt to GDP when the debt is growing faster than the economy. You can't cut spending enough when interest payments alone will consume 6% of GDP by 2027 if rates stay elevated. There's only one mathematical solution to valuation. But today's approach can't look like 1933's blatant confiscation. It needs sophistication, a compelling narrative, and new assets. Enter Bitcoin and gold. The cryptocurrency piece of this strategy is already in motion, though most people are missing the real significance. The danger of stablecoins, a type of cryptocurrency pegged to real-world currencies, like the US dollar, lies in the ways they are meant to be safe. Despite their name, stablecoins have already shown their vulnerability. Terra wiped out almost $60 billion of investor assets in May 2022. Stablecoins like money market funds project security but can collapse under pressure. Nobel Prize-winning economist Jean Tirole observed, But here's where it gets strategic's The Genius Act, signed into law in July 2025. Creates a regulatory framework for stablecoins that analysts at Citigroup project could grow the stablecoin market to $4 trillion by 2030. Why does that matter? Because stablecoins are functionally deposit-taking institutions without the safeguards. They are not required to have deposit insurance, and they're subject to far less oversight than traditional banks. This creates a parallel financial system that operates outside traditional banking regulations, one that the government can influence through policy and eventually revalue through accounting changes. But the bigger play is in Bitcoin itself. The U.S. government currently holds approximately 210,000 Bitcoin seized from criminal enterprises like Silk Road and Bitfinex. At current prices around $100,000 per Bitcoin, that's $21 billion, not nothing, but not enough to matter for a $38 trillion debt problem. But the strategic vision is far larger. Senator Cynthia Lummis has introduced legislation proposing the U.S. acquire 1 million Bitcoin over 5 years. They're not buying this at market prices. That would spike the price and cost too much. They're acquiring it through seizures from criminal investigations, accepting it as payment for fines from crypto companies, and potentially even mining it using government-owned energy infrastructure. The goal isn't to acquire Bitcoin at current prices. The goal is to acquire Bitcoin before they revalue it. While Bitcoin represents the digital front of this strategy, gold is the timeless classic being positioned for the same purpose. The U.S. government officially holds 8,133 tons of gold, approximately 261 million ounces. At current prices, around $2,800 per ounce, that's worth about $731 billion. But here's what changes everything on the government's books. That gold isn't valued at $2,800 per ounce. It's valued at the statutory price set in 1973, $42.22 per ounce. That means while the market says America's gold is worth $731 billion, the government's balance sheet says it's worth just $11 billion. This discrepancy isn't an accounting error, it's strategic flexibility. When the government decides to revalue, they won't just market to market, they'll declare a new official price far higher than current levels. If they were to declare gold valued at $20,000 per ounce for reserve purposes, a 7x increase from today's price, those same gold reserves would suddenly be worth $5.2 trillion. Combined with 1 million Bitcoin revalued to $1 million each, creating another $1 trillion in balance sheet value. The government could technically create $6.2 trillion in new assets overnight. This isn't money they'd spend, it's accounting magic that makes the balance sheet look stronger, reducing the apparent debt burden without a single tax increase or spending cut. But the real effect happens in the economy when gold gets revalued to $20,000 officially. The market price follows. If the largest gold holder in the world says gold is worth $20,000 and backs that with policy, gold doesn't hit $20,000 overnight, but it goes to $5,000, then $8,000, then $12,000 over the next few years. And as gold and Bitcoin skyrocket in dollar terms, the dollar itself collapses in purchasing power. This is the invisible theft. Your savings don't disappear from your account, they just buy less and less until that $100,000 you thought was secure might only buy what $30,000 buys today. The timeline for this reset is already visible if you know where to look, and it's moving faster than most people realize. We're currently in the accumulation phase through 2025. The U.S. is quietly acquiring Bitcoin through seizures and strategic purchases, while maintaining the narrative about digital asset innovation and national security. On the gold side, talk is building about a return to gold-backed currency, not a full gold standard, but partial backing that sounds conservative and responsible but actually sets the stage for revaluation. The crisis phase likely hits in 2026. The debt ceiling fights become severe. Bond markets show stress with yields spiking, and the government needs justification for extraordinary measures. This crisis creates the political cover for what comes next. Then comes the revaluation phase in 2027. The government announces the strategic Bitcoin reserve is operational, holding 1 million Bitcoin valued at $1 million per coin for balance sheet purposes. Simultaneously, they announce a return to gold backing, with gold revalued to $20,000 per ounce. This is sold as stabilizing the currency, restoring confidence, and ensuring American financial leadership. The public largely buys it because it sounds strong, the opposite of money printing. But the outcome is inevitable. Bitcoin surges from $100,000 toward $1 million. Gold rockets from $2,800 toward $20,000, and the dollar loses 70% of its purchasing power. Food prices triple, energy prices quadruple, and housing becomes unaffordable for millions, despite nominal prices rising. The economy enters stagflation, high inflation, with low growth and unemployment spiking to 8 to 10%. But for the government, mission accomplished. The $38 trillion debt, while still $38 trillion in nominal terms, is now worth only $12 trillion in real terms. They've erased $26 trillion in debt burden by destroying your purchasing power. This isn't just an American story, it's global, because every major government faces the same mathematical impossibility of their debt burdens. The BRICS nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, have been accumulating gold at record rates, with central banks buying over 2,000 tons of gold in 2022 and 2023, the most since 1950. China officially holds 2,300 tons of gold, but analysts estimate they actually hold 4,000 to 6,000 tons. Russia holds 2,300 tons, officially. These nations are openly discussing a gold-backed currency alternative to the dollar. Tired of American monetary dominance and the export of inflation, they're not just accumulating gold, they're building alternative payment systems and financial infrastructure designed to operate outside the dollar system. When the U.S. revalues gold, it gives these nations exactly what they need, a way to revalue their own reserves and erase their own debt burdens. This creates an unspoken coordination, no formal agreements, but aligned interests. Every government benefits from a global reset that revalues hard assets and devalues fiat currencies. The difference is preparation. While governments and the wealthy are positioning themselves with hard assets, the average person remains heavily exposed to the coming dollar destruction. So who wins and who loses when this reset happens? The winners are clear. The U.S. government eliminates $26 trillion in real debt burden without defaulting. Politicians avoid the painful choices of spending cuts or tax increases. The Federal Reserve maintains control of the monetary system. Early Bitcoin and gold holders see their assets multiply in nominal value. Foreign governments with large gold reserves like China and Russia see their balance sheets strengthen. The wealthy, who typically hold assets rather than cash, preserve their wealth through the transition. The losers are everyone else. The middle class with savings in dollars sees their purchasing power evaporate. Retirees on fixed incomes watch their life savings become inadequate for basic needs. Bondholders, including pension funds that millions depend on AHRI, repaid in devalued dollars, effectively losing 70% of their real value. Workers find their wages can't keep pace with exploding prices. Renters get priced out as landlords raise rents to match inflation. Small businesses collapse as margins get crushed between rising costs and consumers' reduced purchasing power. The wealth gap doesn't just widen, it becomes a chasm, with those holding hard assets on one side and those holding dollars on the other. So what can you do right now? First, get out of dollar-denominated assets. Government bonds, corporate bonds, any fixed income investments are death in this environment. They'll pay you back with devalued dollars. Reduce cash holdings to what you need for 3 to 6 months of expenses, no more. Second, get into hard assets, physical gold that you actually hold, not paper gold through Gold is the 5,000-year proven store of value that will preserve purchasing power through the reset. Bitcoin, if you understand the technology and can hold it securely, offers digital gold with even greater potential upside given the government's own revaluation plans. Real estate with productive use, farmland, rental properties in strong markets, not speculative vacation homes. Commodities like energy and agriculture will rise with inflation. Third, get out of debt. While it might seem counterintuitive, since you'd repay with cheaper dollars, your income likely won't keep pace with inflation, making debt a trap. Pay off high-interest debt immediately. Fourth, diversify. Internationally open foreign bank accounts in stable currencies, like Swiss francs or Singapore dollars. Consider foreign real estate in countries with stronger fiscal positions. The goal is to have wealth in multiple currencies and jurisdictions, so you're not 100% exposed to the dollar collapse. Fifth, Build skills and community relationships when currency fails. What matters is what you can do, what you can produce, and who you know. Practical skills, medical knowledge, repair abilities, agricultural expertise become more valuable than cash. Community networks provide resilience that no financial asset can match. This isn't doomsday prepping, it's historical pattern recognition. The U.S. debt-to-GDP at 132% is mathematical fact. The $1.2 trillion annual interest payment is mathematical fact. The government's inability to pay this through traditional means is mathematical fact. Every government in history facing this situation has chosen devaluation. The U.S. did it in 1933, they're doing it again now. The only difference is the mechanism. Instead of just gold, they have Bitcoin. Instead of blatant confiscation, they have sophisticated narrative control. The strategic Bitcoin reserve isn't about innovation, it's about creating an asset to revalue. The gold-backed dollar talk isn't about sound money, it's about justifying gold revaluation. Every policy move is setting up the reset, and you're the collateral damage unless you position yourself correctly. The window is closing. 2025 is the accumulation phase. Your last best chance to position before the crisis phase hits in 2026, and the revaluation executes in 2027. This isn't coming in 20 years, the pieces are moving right now. The choice is simple: adapt or get destroyed. Position yourself in hard assets, preserve your wealth through the reset, and use that preserved wealth to build something better on the other side. Or hold dollars, trust the government's narrative, and watch your life savings evaporate. I know which choice I'm making. The only question is which choice you'll make.